Hello, my name is Kasper and welcome to the next episode of JavaScript Crash Course 2023. So if you want to land your first job in the JavaScript development or web development position, just follow my tutorial and go with this episode. If you haven't watched previous videos, I recommend you to go back and see how the environment is set up and how to make declaration of variables, what data structures is, etc. So we are going to the for loops. What are for loops and why we need them so much in our daily job as developers? So loops are some piece of code which is defined to execute some other code blocks if the statement is true and make them iterating. For example, I will show you the first one, which is for loop. And let's define some array, and I will assign to cars array, for example, BMW, Honda, Audi, and let's take something American, Ford. So I have this array and I would like to print every element of an array to the console, and making it like manually, it could take a long time, especially when the array is about 100 elements or thousands. So it's not super practical. I can make, of course, like that. Take the first element, and go to all of them. So I have, and it's not practical, not clean, and never do it in this way. But how can I avoid it? I can make something called for loop, and for. How its syntax is built, so I will make let. In the brackets, I define some conditions, some iteration statement, and let y is equal to 0, so it starts from 0, and it's lower than the length of this array, so I will print also the length of array, cars length, increment this variable and do the piece of code here. Okay, the length of an array is 4, but what is more important, array is starting from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. There is no fourth element. I will try to print it. Undefined, but to get the last element, I have to minus 1 and I have 4. So this for loop is executed when the I is lower than car's length, so it's go from 0 to 3, not 4, it's lower, not lower and equal, and it's incrementing. So it starts with I0, and I can make something like that, cars and the position I, so it starts with 0, console log the first element, go with the 1, console log the second element, 2 and 3. Let's see how it goes. And I have all elements here. I can also make this array bigger. Let's assume that there are different variables and I can go through all of them. So that is how basically for loop is working. I can also, let me make an array like previously. I can of course skip some conditions. For example, I will define I here and skip it. It will still be working because in the syntax is required the semicolon here. If I skip this semicolon, there is a syntax error. But now I just give the information to the compiler that the first element is passed here somewhere, or is not passed. Then is the second element, and I pass the third element. So one more important thing about it, about for loops, is to never use something like I will increment no matter what. You see how it's counting. There is so much rendering, compiling. It will fill entire memory, so always remember to make their conditions to stop the code, because it will just eat all your memory in the browser. When it comes to for loops, there is also a shorter version of declaring that. So I will go with the cars array, and I'm going with for let x in cars, open curly brackets, and console log x. So I see that I will go through each position of the cars array with that. And if I type here cars array and pass x, I will go through each position of an array. So it's basically how it works. It works with arrays and objects, and what is more important, only use it when the order is not needed, required. So I will show you the next method of shortening the for loop, but it's called off. We have undefined, but there is only past x, and I'm consoling it out in the console, and it's printed. I can show you one more time. All is printed. It can be made with strings, object arrays, and iterable data structures. So it's basically how it works. And we are going to the while loops and do while. The next method of achieving the loop is called while and do while. I will show you on that. And maybe we will start with while. So while some condition is true, compile this. And I have to pass there some condition, and maybe I will do it with simple while true, console log cars. What will happen? If it will break the console, because always is true and cars are printed and my memory is smashed, so I have to stop it. But how to achieve the result like in the for loop with the while? I have to make it differently, so I will start with let I is equal to 0, then while I is lower than car's length, I will compile console log cars and the element defined by I, and then increment I. So it starts with 0, it's lower than car's length, it prints the first element 0, then increments I, then go with this, and the result is achieved. So basically it is how it works, and the next one will be the do while. To show the difference between the while and do while, I will make a quick transformation of that, and this syntax is like do something while true, and I will pass there intentionally false. So in simple while the code should not work, but in do while it firstly compiles the code. I hacked it. I will console this. I hacked it, and then false and nothing's going more. So it's basically how the do while works, and it's needed in some conditions in the daily basic coding, but I don't remember exactly when I used it previously, but it can be something to clean the code and very beneficial. So it's a very fundamental method, and I will try to achieve the same result as printing each element of an array with do while, and I will go with let I is equal to 0, then I will make there I is lower than car's length, then I will increment I and print car's I. What will happen? Will it be correct? It's correct. It worked. What if I go with the incrementation here? It's not working, it's starting with the second element because it incremented. So these structures are like that. Thank you so much for watching this part of the tutorial, this episode with the loops. I hope it was very helpful and beneficial, and with all of the knowledge which I gave you in the last episodes, previous episodes, it's going to make something big, a big difference, and we are going to discuss also objects, arrays, JSON, DOM, algorithm, functions, and the introduction to the frameworks. It will be a huge fundamental for the further development and acquiring a lot more knowledge and go through your web development career. Thank you so much, and see you in the next episode.